Highest frequency a sample rate can record or accurately capture is basically called the NYQUIST frequency. All right, you take the sampling rate and you divide it by 2. Feel good with that? Okay, because we'll talk about some numbers here in a minute, some sample rates you might have heard of. Okay, we got an analog wave, 1 hertz, right? I call them cycles per second, right? So 1 CPS with this is 2 seconds, okay? So 1, 2, all right? You said I need to have what? How many samples per second do I need with 1 cycle? 2. Does that make sense? Okay. What if I don't do that? What if I break the law here and I say, I'm just crazy today, I'm going to go ahead and do 1. So 1 cycle per second, it's moving up and down, but I only take 1 picture per second. What is that going to create? When I connect those red dots together, what are we going to get? And we're going to end up with a straight line. That makes sense? Is that my wave? Is that movement? Do you know what that is called in audio? It's rather evil. It's called DC. If you ever had DC in a PA system, you would blow up your speaker. I'm not saying to do this at home, but if you were to connect a 9-volt battery to a speaker, it will just push it. You know, what does this sound like? Not like that, right? The speaker's just sort of holding there. You know, you get enough power behind it, it'll start smoking, right? What if I were to flip the polarity on my battery? It would suck in and hold there, right? We don't want direct current. We don't want a battery attached to our speakers. We want what? Do you know the other type of current we can have? AC, alternating current, right? Where it goes back and forth. Well, that's our wave, right? We have an up and a down. How are we going to get that? With sampling, we need at least two pictures, right? We got to capture the up and the down, right? Per cycle. So the minimum sample rate was what? 2. If we have 1 CPS, we got to have at least 2, right? So what do we get? Hey, we get movement, right? Get my goofy arm moving up and down, right? Again, if I had 4, would that be better? Sure, right? 8. How about 1,000? Would that be even better? Yeah, we're going to be able to draw this wave really well. Does that make sense? Feeling pretty good on samples? All right, cool. Very much. I use that as a term, right? And you ever seen a movie shot today because everybody's trying to be like really cutting edge action, right? And they pan the camera too fast, and you get this this weird stuttering thing. It looks really weird, right? There was a law basically in cinematography. They said you can only pan 90 degrees. You have to take at least 15 seconds, and they don't do that anymore. They're just like when you get this weird to make it look smooth with that frame rate. You have to actually, you know, slow your movements down, which is not something we do in, you know, you go watch The Bourne Identity or whatever, and it's just like crazy. So, and we'll get these weird things. We'll see. So the weird stuff we'll get when we don't follow the rules is called aliasing. So how many have been out to an airfield and seen the propeller on a plane spin up? You guys all have seen that at some time in your life, right? And it starts rotating, and it gets to a certain number of rotations per second, and all of a sudden, this is a weird one, it goes still. But then even more interesting is it starts going the other direction. Is it actually moving in that other direction? No, it's eclipsed what I call your frame rate, which isn't really what it is, but it's just an easy thing to describe. Your brain can only perceive so many cycles per second, rotations per second, and all of a sudden we're beyond that, and now we're seeing stuff move backward. Is it actually doing that? No. It's an alias. It's an incorrect frequency that you're seeing, incorrect rotations. What's weird is that it's actually going the other direction, which is a strange thing. You've maybe even seen it in everything from a ceiling fan to a, you know, I don't know, all kinds of things, you know, tires on a car. See it in the movies all the time because it's such a low frame rate again, right? So here's some examples of aliasing. So this is 3 CPS. Does that make sense? If this was 1 second here, right? So 3 CPS, what do we need minimum? 6, right? Up, down, right? To get that in there. So what if I do 3? I'm going to get straight line again. I'm going to get DC. Bad, right? Don't want that. What if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I get something totally weird. It's like, well, what frequency is that? It's like 1.5. Is that the right note? No, it's an incorrect frequency. I want you to know something else. It's actually inverted polarity-wise. It's actually going the opposite direction. And that's another kind of problem we can have. We start getting the wrong sound. I'm going to play you aliases. You'll get to hear them. They are awful. You might have heard them in like an MP3 before, or if you had the settings wrong on a digital audio system, and they sound really bad. And so we're going to talk about how we can avoid them. So, all right, and then the last one's showing how if we got it right. Questions on aliases? Aliases are generated when you try to convert frequencies higher than your sample rate supports, right? Something that's higher than the NYQUIST frequency. All right. So, CDs. You guys know this sample rate? You ever seen this in your software? No? You don't know it? Okay. Cool. Well, new for everybody then. 44.1 kilohertz is a very, 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 very common sample rate. So 44.1 kilohertz would mean 44,100 samples are taken every second. So that crystal's pumping out that rate, and our little camera's snapping away, taking pictures of the waveform. Admittedly, what type of music sounds really good in digital audio? Like genres of music, types of music. What would you guys say? Come on. No, you guys don't think any music sounds good in digital audio? Come on. You got an answer? I would argue against that. I would argue against classical music digitally. The simpler the better. Like? Okay, drums possibly. Okay. Bass frequencies. How about some techno? How about hip hop? How about heavy, loud, crunching rock stuff today? Yeah, why? How well are we drawing 100 hertz when we got 44,100 samples? It's like a perfect drawing, right? It's doing a great job. How about those really low frequencies, like 20 hertz, right? The booming bass in your car, right? The subs, like, could we pull that off with cassette? No, it didn't reproduce those kind of frequencies. CDs reproduce low frequencies like nothing else, man. It's like, man, low end, we can draw that. I got that. I can draw you DC if you want it. Not that it's good, but, you know, low movements, that's easy to draw. What are we going to have a hard time drawing? Yeah, I mean, think about it. How many dots do we have for 20,000? A frequency at 20K, we got 44,000, so we're going to be barely just getting an outline, a sketch, right? So high frequencies are kind of getting abbreviated. Does that make sense? You guys, okay, cool. So like acoustic jazz, classical, things like that with a lot of high frequency content, we could probably do something better. Go ahead. Cymbals, yeah, definitely. It can sound kind of harsh sometimes, yeah. And so we'll talk a little bit about that today, what we can do to maybe do better with that. So, but as a rule, this should record up to what? 22,050 correctly, right? I mean, using NYQUIST theorem, but in general, I could argue that maybe it would be a little better if we had a little bit of more, you know, information there in between the points. So, whoa, let me go back one. Sorry. You guys know what? You know what frequency response human beings can hear? 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, right? You guys ever read about this and so forth? It kind of depends on the human. Right? How many rock concerts have you been to? You know, me standing in front of a full stack and next to the drummer. It is. It's not easy, right? I've heard of like applications on the iPhone now that are designed to like bother young people. annoy you're a teenager, right? With this crazy high frequency, or in your pets too, right? So anyway, I haven't tried it out, but yeah, if you haven't had your hearing test and had it scoped out what you can hear and so forth, so it's interesting, and why I bring it up is because supposedly CDs can go from 20 to 20, right? 22 on the high end, 22K. What can a microphone pick up? It does. So I just grabbed one. This is a condenser microphone from AKG. Something I found on the net. So I was like, okay, here's a C1000. So it's not doing so great on the low frequencies. It's kind of rolling off a little bit there. On the high frequencies, it's pretty good. It's going all the way up to 20. Now, above 20, do you think it's like a cliff? It just like falls off. All frequencies just die from that point on? No. They just don't show it anymore because, again, it's probably not, humans aren't really enjoying a lot of that, right? But do you think that that line probably continues on in some kind of fashion beyond it? Do you think it picks up 30 kilohertz maybe? Yeah. A little softer, probably dropping down as it goes and so forth. Okay. Have you ever seen what a dynamic mic? Do you guys know what a condenser mic is compared to a dynamic mic? I'll have to have another clinic someday. Talk about those kinds of things. Dynamic mics are like an SM58 or this kind of mic, usually a stick type mic. They're really good for voice, guitar amps. You always see an SM57 from it. They typically don't pick up high frequencies as well.